Marissa Garcia, you're part of the good news of what's happening in North America these days. You're part of a millennial generation that is bringing hope in a way that a lot of folks that are older don't realize. You're the first generation that are digitally connected, and because of that, your generation is much more aware of economic, racial, environmental justice issues. And the particular good news is you guys really, so many of you want to use your lives to make a difference in the world. And most of your generation are not people of faith, but they're people of compassion. Mm-hmm. They're people of action. And tell us what the organization that you had and what you do to make a difference as one of those millennials.
Of course. So the organization I work at is called Huerto de la Familia, or the Family Garden, and yes. We work here in Eugene, Oregon. Mm-hmm. And what we do is work to provide families in Eugene from Latin America that have come here as immigrants and live here in our community now with land to grow organic food on.
Oh, really?
And this is meant to be a family activity, so we have whole families growing food together. Each family gets their own individual plot, so once we give them a plot, it's completely autonomous, and the idea is that they get complete control over what they grow and when they grow it and when they come in water. But we do provide training, so we have organic gardening classes in Spanish and food preservation classes in Spanish.
Yes, muy bien.
Yeah, and we've expanded now to provide business classes based off of an interest in small farm and food businesses in our participating families.
How long have you been doing this? This is fascinating.
Me personally, or our organization?
The organization.
The organization started in 1999, and it wasn't meant to be a nonprofit. Basically, the person who started the organization, Sarah, had these women she would work with as a social worker that were from Latin America, and they had grown food in their countries before they came here, and that was really important to them. And they didn't have the opportunity here because if you don't have enough money to live in a house with a yard or pay for a community garden plot, which costs more than you would think, then they didn't have that option.
Yeah.
And so she kind of did what she could to connect them to land, and that's still what we do now. We're really flexible. We still will have a couple plots at one garden, a couple at another, and then we have other garden sites where we have 40 plots or 20 plots. So we're very flexible about just connecting whatever land is offered to us to people who want to use it.
And how many people are involved benefiting from your program right now?
We have 65 families currently growing food, and each family has usually at least 4 people, so hundreds of people. And we have a 30 family wait list, which is really exciting, and that's a wait list that has occurred without any outreach of any sort, so that's all word of mouth.
Do you have 1 or 2 stories, good news stories of where families have grown food and how they're benefiting?
Yes, so I actually have something that I learned yesterday from our garden program manager. And her name is Joanna. She's really special. She's been at our organization for 5 years, which is a long time in the nonprofit world. People don't usually stick around that long. And she still gets so excited about the work. You would think she just started yesterday. She's so happy about her job. I mean, I was just at a meeting with her a couple days ago, and she goes, I have the best job in the world. And she's so enthusiastic. But something she mentioned yesterday that I didn't necessarily realize about the work we do is that not only is it empowering the families as they're in the garden, but that trickles into community involvement, an increase in community involvement generally. So then there's increased likelihood that they're going to participate in the school system and learn to navigate it and be more active in their child's school, and they're going to be more active in their church communities. So we've seen a really direct correlation between participating in the garden program and then increasing church and school participation in other community organizations.
Could you give us an example or two of how the families are benefiting from growing their own food? And if you have stories of where they connect to some of the social institutions in Eugene, love to hear those too.
Right. So benefiting from the food, there's different ways people can grow food. We have families who are growing small garden plots. And we're also starting a farm program for families who want to grow on a larger scale. So a very specific way families benefit from the food is that the food they grow, they choose. What that means is that a lot of what they're growing is stuff that they can't get here otherwise, culturally appropriate foods that they're bringing seeds from Mexico, or friends are bringing seeds, and they're trading seeds and they're trading plants. And it's really emotional a lot of times because they'll grow a food that we don't have here at all that's really important to them, and then it's making a connection to something they haven't had for maybe 10 years even. And that's a very highly emotional process when that happens, and people are really thankful for that opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's remarkable. And what are some ways then that they are participating in schools, community churches?
Right. So there's different ways. That's actually something Joanna would answer better because she's the one who interacts with them directly, and she was the one who was telling me this yesterday, and I was happy to learn that. But I have seen that we've done some focus groups, and we're part of an alliance, and we did a focus group in English and a focus group in Spanish. And from there, we tried to gather a couple of really dedicated community leaders, people in those focus groups who wanted to actually participate in our alliance going forward and be part of a decision-making process of where our alliance moves. What do we do? What activities do we pursue? And when we held this meeting for the leaders or potential leaders, most people to show up were from the Spanish-speaking focus group, and 2 of them were very dedicated. They were participants of our program, and it was a guy named Juan and his wife, and her name's Jacquelina. They were very interested in being leaders in this process and also sharing the knowledge they now had with other people. So they had like a very strong interest. They now have a farm, and so they wanted to show other Latinos in the community how to do farming in Eugene, which is really different than doing it in other countries.
And did they start with just a garden plot and then become farmers?
Exactly. So they started as a garden plot with
wonderful.
Huerto, but the way they became farmers is that Huerto de la Familia and Heifer International partnered to do a small farm incubator program. And so it was a cooperative. Heifer and Huerto funded it, and there was a cooperative farm that began. And now that farm has graduated to become its own independent business.
Wonderful.
And then they now very much understand the bigger pictures and the system change about their work. They get it, and so they really want to participate in helping other people being brought into that change.
So they become good news then to their neighbors. My last question for you, how is this helping out families economically in addition to reconnecting to foods that are a part of their country of origin? How is it helping them economically?
Right. So at the most basic level, what our work is doing is feeding people. That's the most basic level. So the idea is that instead of a food box, you're giving them a garden plot that they can have as long as they're using it. We never take it away unless they're not using it. And they have access to that to grow their own food and preserve their own food to use it later. And a lot of times this is food that they couldn't afford, like simply wouldn't be an option otherwise.
Oh, that's very good news, because you can grow lovely tomatoes and other things here. And do they do food storage too? And
some food storage, squash, other items like that. And it's also like continuing education of helping offer options of ways you could trade out traditional foods for foods that grow well in the Northwest. So it's some of the growing of culturally heritage appropriate foods, and then also some learning of ways you can sub in things we have here for things that aren't available, that they're used to using in recipes.
Well, you're an example of millennial leaders that are finding new ways, and this is a new one on me. I am delighted to meet you, and I'm grateful for the work that you're doing and the difference it's making.
Thanks.
Thank you.